Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Our community needs Henry Cuellar.
He kept our businesses open during the pandemic and reduced taxes.
We received millions of dollars to protect our families and borders.
He wrote the program that guaranteed health care for millions of Texas children.
Because of him, I have the opportunity to study at Laredo College.
Henry helps us with prescriptions and Social Security benefits. If we lose him in Congress, we lose everything.
I'm Henry Cuellar, and I'm going to continue fighting for you and your family, and I approve this message.
Back at you and Gloves Off, and today I have a great friend, one I consider a brother. It's Guru Joe, and we're going to be touching base on just martial arts and training and what it takes. Some people search to gain knowledge, and all that hard work and sometimes comes with it and pain and I guess suffering, if you want to put it that way, because we all suffered the fact that monetarily we can't pay for something, but we found instructors that would lend a helping hand sometimes, but they knew what was going on, traveling and so on and so forth, as you well know that. So kind of kick that over, kind of thoughts, because there's a lot of folks out there that are looking for martial arts. I guess they start looking at the internet, they're not fulfilled with the arts that are around, or they already know what type of style they want to look for, and that instructor's not around. What do you say?
Well, I was just about to kick it right back at you, because I think it would be interesting to know how you chose the first thing you studied, right? And how that came about, because I think it's almost always a combination of luck and happenstance along with the focus, right?
When I was very young, I was 6 years old and just gotten my ass kicked in the playground. And my father took me to his brother, my uncle, and he said, teach him. Little did I know what I was learning until I was about 14, 15 years old. They called it cipota. And my uncle used to say, boxing's for the ring, cipota's for the street. And then later on in time, I find out that cipota is Basque for savate. And when I left to college, I started looking for savate. There was no savate anywhere. So I would always come back. So Dallas, I was kind of like a kid in a candy store. There were so many different martial arts. So, I went from Shaolin Kung Fu, and I ended up finding Aikijitsu and the Aiki arts. And of course, I got involved with Kisi, which was an American Kempoist. And then they'll say, how come you kick that way? Well, that's the way I learned how to kick. And that's basically how Savate kind of took off. And sometimes we had to, John Ayers, Sensei John Ayers, lived in Cattle Mills, and we lived in Irving, and that was about 60 miles. And we used to drive 60 miles to carpool, maybe sometimes 3 times a week.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's very simple, if you're finding good instruction, to travel that much.
It's incredibly common. I was lucky enough, and when I was younger, there was a martial arts school walking distance to my house. When I was real little, my family never had the money to pay for lessons, right? And it was a Korean-based school, so I couldn't work for lessons. It was like, the culture is a little different than say the Japanese or the Chinese. But I was fortunate enough that my high school was the only high school east of the Rockies, or east of the Mississippi rather, that had judo. So I got to start out in judo, and I met a friend, this guy Bill, who was really into martial arts. He'd done some American karate or something prior and was looking for something better. We ended up driving all over the place looking for a school, and he found this one school. It was just a pain in the neck to get there. It was 4 towns over, right? But we decided that was the best school in the area. And, so you're in high school and you're driving 4 towns over during rush hour to get to classes that are the adult classes and stuff. And I soon realized it wasn't for me. So I had to travel even farther to find to find something I was really, going to be passionate about. And, the commitments got worse from there. I mean, there was a period of my life where on Sundays, I drove about an hour and a half from where I lived to go train. Then on Mondays and Wednesdays, it was a 50-minute drive. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it was a little bit over 90 minutes to get to where I was training. So I had Fridays off for a little while, and then I found something on Fridays too, right? And the level of commitment was just significant. I'd be lying if I said I didn't sleep in my car on some days in the summertime. It's just like, there's no point in going home. I'll just go right to work, right? And today, though, people are just surrounded by content, right? You can hop on YouTube, stuff that we had to trade. I won't say what I would normally say. We'll say trade our left arm for to even see is now posted on YouTube, and you can see it. You may not understand it, but you can see it. And I think you don't have that mission where you have to meet someone like you are very fortunate. Your uncle, was I'll probably use the wrong term, but a saboteur, right? And that's an unusual circumstance. Not everyone is so lucky. And so for everyone else, there's this journey. Find someone who knows something. Hope they kind of like you, right? And can give you that training. And unfortunately, that's still true today, I think. But people don't realize that's the case. They think it's just a commodity. I trade my dollars for the lesson. I get a lesson. It's like taking pickleball classes,
No, you're absolutely correct. I knew that what I was learning was to fight, because I was in so many fights, and it was good for that. But I never really paid attention to it until in my 20s when I came back from France, that I realized, there's a lot more to this than just that. And that's really when I realized what was going on with my uncle. And of course, he passed on when I was 28. But then, I was surrounded with great talent in Irving. You had Keith C., which was it was a first generation Parker man, as well as Adriano Emperado. So you had that rough and tumbleness from him, that
Yep.
You didn't see it around. You saw it from him, but not all the Kempo schools have that rough and tumble school, that kind of thing that you in there. And just like you with a Silat and so on and so forth, you get that because you got people that were first generations that were teaching you.
There is truth to that. And it's interesting. Like when you talk about American Kempo, that is a method. The teaching structure was designed so that it could be taught effectively, right? To within a school environment. Many martial arts don't have that. I'm kind of envious of that particular structure, right?
Right.
And I've known some great Kempo people, but I want to get your opinion on this, because I've noticed over the past 20 years or so, maybe it's been longer than that, but I was examining all this stuff out of personal interest. Could I teach what I do in a better way so I could have more students, right? Just to have a thriving kind of group of this crazy stuff that I do that my buddy Rick Solo always says I belong in the basement as a Muay Thai gym. That's, you're the weird guys, but it seems like that the standards have just been progressively dropped in the favor of being able to graduate everyone from the class. And the argument is that the old timers were just too tough and too rough, and it caused people to quit ahead of time. And that's why so few people made it. And I just like your opinion on that, is, because it seems to me like maybe there's things you can do to keep people longer and better early on. I think the Kempo schools do that very well, the good Kempo schools. But then there's this thing where all of a sudden you're teaching less, you're showing less, you're requiring less, so you can keep the whole class together, learning on a rotating curriculum and da. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, Kempo was made to have for success, for you to build students, okay, and for you to have students. And it was an art that was designed for that method of bringing in students. They took it from a dancing curriculum, dance studio curriculum. You learn so much and you have to pay for so many lessons. By the time you know it, you have a big school. That's what it was for. the problem that we have now is due to overhead, due to, and now, probably late 70s and the 80s, people wanted to have big martial arts schools. They wanted to have the storefront schools. But when you have the storefront schools, you're paying high-end dollars for those locations. So when you all of a sudden you're paying $4,500 for a location, and you're doing it at $100, you need 45 students just to pay for the rent.
Yeah.
So they have to bring in a type of income, side income, to come in. And that side income ended up becoming the belts, the tests. So if I can test this person 15 times at these prices, I'm just going to throw $100. Well, that's $1,500 that I did not have before, right? So all of a sudden, it went from, each student in 1 year, I can test them 4 or 5 times. Maybe I can test them 6 times every 2 months. And some schools say, well, maybe I can test them 12 times every month. I'm going to test them. It's $100. So you're already talking about $1,200 that you didn't have before. So it became a money making scenario. And when the money making scenario came in, then some of the schools would say, okay, now I'm going to say the black belt's going to be a $500 charge. While before, back then, you had to prove yourself. You had to learn. You have to prove yourself for understanding. You have to give a little bit of pain to gain that. And some arts are still that way. It's not that they were tougher. It's just that money became an issue. And once money came in, that's what you had. I'm gonna put it to Savat. You have, you start off with nothing. It's blue, green, red like black, white, yellow, silver, and there's 3 levels of silver. Well, you need 3 professors to form 1 silver glove. Okay, you have to. That's just the way it is. And you have some areas where there's no professor. All of a sudden, you have more silver gloves than France. So you're like, where did this come of age? And you start realizing that it's a money-making scheme. Some they use it more for business. They don't care about their name. They don't care about what the product that they're pulling out. What they care about is how many people I can test to be able to make. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But it's interesting because I do believe that a quality teacher should be able to charge for what he does and should be paid, compensated for his time. This is not a charity. You might have the fighters or we call it the Chanmanren, the man at the gate, that your school, people who defend the school, they might be the guys who can't always pay their dues or whatever, right? They make up for it in other ways, right? But there's a fine line between being able to make a living and then being incentivized to cheapen the art. I was talking to another fellow. I have a couple of Facebook friends people that I've been trying to get together with for years now, but with COVID and everything, a couple of readers, Kuntao guys, right? Really nice guys. One of them's not too far from me. And we haven't been able to get together because of all the stuff going on. But he made a comment to me the other day where he goes, well, the problem is that, we've allowed lesser men to teach, right? Anyone can open up a school. Anyone can do this thing. You don't see, like in the case of the Chinese martial arts, you don't see red candles burning on the window anymore, right? It's all, opening up to all challengers. You don't have it, at least not in the traditional arts, right? You do have it in the MMA world and the Muay Thai world, and I think I'm jumping subjects here, but how do you see that? Because you run a very successful school in Laredo, and you've been doing this for a long time. How do you see maintaining that integrity? So if someone's looking for a school, a traditional school, and they come, what should they be looking for? I walk in your school. What do I look for?
If you want to look and walk into any school, let's say a person walks into any martial arts school, I always tell them this: do not look at the instructor. Look at the senior students that he has on the mat, because if you're that's more likely the way you're going to be moving. If you have a bunch of kids there, and you're bringing in your son or your daughter to martial arts school, look at the way the kids are behaving, the older ones, the ones that are higher rank. Ask them to take a class or two. If they tell you no, you can't, this and that, walk out. Okay. The prices in martial arts throughout the United States is anywhere between $100 to $350. Period. Go to New York and stuff, it's $350, and it basically goes with the flow of the location and where you're going to be teaching and all that stuff. California's the same way. So not because you're paying higher prices, you're getting better service or better quality. You really have to look into it. You have way too many martial arts that have been generation after generation. They've already produced so many generations of the belt selling phenomena. Okay. And when they look at that, is that worth it? How long does it take, for example, if the most common, how long does it take you to get a black belt in a school? If it takes you a year, well, you know where that's coming from, right? Now, if you go to a boxing gym or a Thai boxing gym or an MMA school, find out their credentials. Have they fought? Have they used it? Have they, how many people have they trained to be in the ring? Are they, and if they tell you, oh, we just do MMA or we just do kickboxing, we do Thai boxing here, but they've actually never taken fighters to the ring, that tells you a different story. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of variables to look at if I'm answering your question. And I think what associations they're with, because people say, don't go to a school that's affiliated. Well, you have to. Who's a governing body?
Right.
You don't make yourself, and here I am, and you know what I'm saying. And I'm
there's some guys out there that do, right?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot, and you better do what I, do, or you're out the door. You have to understand. I know you understand, but folks need to understand that martial arts, and I kind of get what that comment was about lesser men. Before you were tested, before you were challenged, and before you had dojo busting, they used to go down to your school to see if you really had it. Some of us lived that, I had a school in France. You don't think I was tested? Okay. I taught in France for 3 years, and to the day, I'm still the first non-French to ever teach Savate in France in the history of Savate. So when you look at that, there has to be something there, when there, so when you look at stuff like that, is that the type of, when you look at the histories and touch base, look and ask the instructor, ask them straight out, when was the last time you used it? If they come up with some hokey solution or answer like, you know what, you really need to, this is for you to better yourself spiritually and everything else. Well, then I can do that in church or the synagogue or the mosque, Why do I need you for me to get spirituality? I actually want you to teach me how to fight and defend myself. That's why I'm here. Right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You have to go to those type of instructors to kind of get an answer, That's my opinion. That's the way I look at it. Does the instructor care about his reputation as putting out a good product, or the instructor is making black belts in a year?
Right. I think the point that really hits home with me is, and this is something I tell my son when it comes to dating girls. I still look at how they treat you. Look at how they treat other people. And it's kind of the same thing as don't look at the instructor. Look at those senior students. How are they moving? What are they doing? Right. That's right there. That's a little element of gold that people can walk away with this conversation, because I have to tell you, I can remember what it was like when I knew very little. Right. And walking these different schools and being very impressed by things that today I look at and go, wow, how grateful am I that for some reason I didn't choose that,
Absolutely.
And that's not to put down at some other martial arts. Just some things are better at some different stuff than other things, right? It is putting down the martial arts. I'm just trying to be political.
And I'm like this. the name of the martial art is not going to fight for you.
Yeah.
And I see it with Silat, and I see it with Savat, and I see it with Thai boxing. And so the name's not going to fight for you. You know that, right? And your instructor is not going to fight for you either. So,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So, if
yeah,
you
no,
think
it's funny. That carries over to the experience. Like my longtime students, every time I bring out some new piece of paper for them, they get depressed because the paper doesn't fight for them. They know that. All it is at that point is, okay, I think you're okay. I think you're pretty good, right? People want paper these days. Here's some paper. Congratulations. And most of the time they're like, oh no, because now I got to live up to that piece of paper. But also, they're doing the gut check of where they think their deficiencies are, right? Because they want to strive for that achievement. And the achievement's not the paper. The achievement's what can you do? How do you handle this? And there's another interesting you said there, and this is a conversation I've had many times with people going all the way back to the earliest days of my training, which is that the purpose and the presence of spirituality necessarily and martial arts. Like my interest, because I was smart mouth kid with a Batman syndrome. I tried to defend all the kids from bullies, but I was not the biggest and strongest kid, right? So ergo, I had a real desire on how to fight. And I didn't really see any point, people were trying to do different, important different spiritual techniques and stuff into their training. And I was just like, well, I don't really see the point in this, but there is an inner journey, right? Where you develop your confidence, you learn how to relax in the face of danger. You learn how to not be bothered by people's words, right? And until their center seeks yours, right? And there is a psychological, mental, if you want to call it spiritual aspect, but it's not a bunch of puffery. And you see it where it's not emphasized. You learn the same thing, I'm sure, in Savat. The minute you face another person across the ring, you have to come to terms with yourself very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to kind of use the quote of Dr. Jordan Peterson, which says that a man that knows violence is the only man that can be peaceful. In a way, that's true, because if you start seeing the very good martial artists that know how to take care of business, they're very peaceful individuals. They might be laughing all the time, or there's banter involved and stuff like that. And you see that because they're very, how can I say, they're at ease with themselves. They're peaceful. Only because you do martial arts doesn't mean that you're out there picking fights.
It's a funny, I'm not going to say who this was, but one of the Dutch uncles we both know, right? I just met this guy, and I was told just how, crazy and psycho he was, and so on and so forth. I'm like, okay, whatever. And we were at some public event, and he was carrying some drinks. We're doing some check out to get some beverages, and someone turns on and just bumps into him, knocks everything. I mean, it was a very sudden kind of thing, right? It was a big crowd. And I was like, oh shit, here comes this unfortunate smackdown and this poor idiot that bumped into him. And his response was instead to apologize and, offer to help clean him up and be really, just really kind and gentle. And, I was like, all right, you know what? He just showed me his self-defense, because he didn't create a problem by losing his cool. He completely diffused it if the other guy wanted to press the problem. And he saved himself the legal hassles of taking someone's head off or bumping into him, right? But unlike his actual reputation of being kind of a crazy guy. So, these guys who have been tested in ways, I think even, some of the craziest of life experiences, they also develop some of the most humble attitudes, because I think it can save your life.
Absolutely. And those are the people that you really want to learn from. Those right there.
So how do they find someone like that? I mean,
I think it's by chance, or you search, or let me put it this way. When I was growing up, I knew which kids will throw. I knew which kids won't. And you knew which kids in the other high schools will throw down, and you know which ones didn't. You know which ones were the good fighters and which ones didn't. And you learned that. You learned that, and the martial arts is the same way. You know which ones are not there, and then you know ones that are the real ones. And it happens. And right now, like you said, with the internet, with YouTube and everything, there's so much content out there that you can actually say, you know what, I want to study this martial art, and you type it in there, and you can probably find the direction. Well, before you knew it existed, but you had to travel so many miles or whatnot just to get one, or you go, you know what I'm saying? So
absolutely. I mean, I case in point, look, there's a martial art I studied when I was younger. It was, you know, one of my teacher's teachers. My teacher moved away, and he said, "Hey, go train with Uncle Jack." And I can tell you, I learned this stuff at the time, but I'm not sure I fully understood it. Years later, thanks to the magic of YouTube, I found the school his stuff came from, right? And was able to actually see it and go, there's this thing. But I had a background in it, so I could grok a lot out of that and then reach out to these guys. But for the average person, not so much. And I think that's actually another challenge right now is there's, you know, when people are looking for schools, they have these preconceptions, right? And the preconceptions seem to fall in the buckets of, you know, if it's not MMA, it's not real, or if it's you know, traditional stuff, it has no value or effectiveness, or I get magic powers if I do this, right? And stuff like that. There's a lot of these buckets, and I don't know what it's like down in Laredo, but I'm now sitting in Eastern Virginia, and it's very different. In Chicago, all I got were head knockers because I knew everyone who had clubs. I was well known, and they would send me their students, and it was great, right? These guys were preconditioned, but out here, I get some interesting folks coming to see me. I actually find I have spent more time repairing my students, correcting just how they walk, stand, talk, and breathe, more so than teaching martial arts.
Here, we've been here for such a long time. The school's been here since '88, really. You know, I was in Dallas and everywhere else, but my dad and my uncle used to teach. So people know that the school's here. For a while, we got the rough and tumblers that wanted to come in. And when I came back from Dallas and moved down in the early '90s, that's what we had. Everybody wanted to be in there. And then kind of shifted over. Now, I've kind of weeded out that, you know, but I don't. Yeah. So right now, you know, my wife and them, we're trying, you know, Savat, if we don't produce and get the young kids involved, it's going to die, period. Not only here, everywhere else. My school's the only school in the United States that has kids doing Savat. They put it to that way. So
no, that's sad.
You know what I'm saying? So that's sad.
And it shouldn't be that way because, you know, Savant fits right in with what's popular these days. There's no reason it shouldn't be popular.
It shouldn't be that way. And so it's hard. You know, people want to compete in Savant. We can't have Savant competition because of it's like weights. You have to have the weight. You have to have it's just like boxing. Yeah. There's none. Chicago might have a heavyweight. Dallas might have a middleweight. We might have a lightweight. You know what I'm saying? So you're like,
yeah.
Where can you get it? You know, so when they're really serious about fighting, and then we can take them to boxing and start learning the ring, start getting a little bit of ring savvy in there. That's the best way you can do it. Learn amateur boxing, get your way in there. But so professionally wise, I've never taken any professional fighters. I've taken a lot of amateur fighters. We've done very, very well. In the last couple of years, I really haven't because I kind of got away from that. But I tell people this, if you're looking to fight, talk to the clubs that are around. Find out which is the one that has the best reputation of taking fighters to the ring and winning.
Yeah.
And winning. Only because you take fighters to the ring doesn't mean anything if they're losing. You know, I was talking to a local fighter here, and he goes, "Oh man, you know, I'm gonna fight next month. And I go, didn't you just lose? In my head, I was thinking, didn't you just lose last month? Or you're gonna fight again?
Right.
And he goes, and we're talking. He goes, who are you gonna fight? He goes, I'm gonna fight down in Brownsville, Texas. I go, okay. And I said, how many fights you have? And he goes, I got 8. I go, how many have you won? This is a pro. How many have you won? He goes, 3. Well, that's not a good record. You know what I'm saying? You lost 5 and you won 3. You know, something, and you lost the last 5. You won your first 3 when you were with another coach, and you came here with this coach, and now you're losing. You better start thinking about, you know what, switching coaches.
Yeah. It's a funny story. There's a gentleman in Chicago, his name is Joe Judt, and he runs these big tournaments, MMA tournaments, kickboxing, right? And one year, this is years ago, one of my students was also training with another guy in MMA, and he wanted me to come corner for him. And I'm like, I'm not an MMA guy. Oh, I'm going to yell at you in Indonesian or Chinese. How's that going to help you? It's going to confuse things, right? But I did it anyhow because he wanted me to be it. At least I can wrap hands, right? So I'm sitting there, and as we're walking in, it was fun because I walked down to the locker room. You hear people hitting pads, and some of the crazier, like South Side Muay Thai and boxing guys see me, and they're like, "Hey, Jonah!" Everyone, why is everyone hugging the weird guy in khakis and a work shirt? I came right from work, right? And I see this team, and they walk in, and they got these shirts on, and it says Team Terror, and it's got these horrific scenes on it. And I watch these guys walk in, and I just look at them, and I go, "These guys are gonna get their ass beat," and they did. And I was talking to Joe Judt, and I think they meant to call it Team Terrible, but they made a mistake on this, right? And there was a correlation between how scary your T-shirt was and how bad you were at fighting. But think about this: this guy convinced 5 or 6 people that he could teach them how to fight in the ring against guys who came from schools where there was a history of victory, right? That there was clear training records, great stuff. And he convinced them to get in that ring, get their ass beat. So, that could happen to you. That's my warning to the people out there, not you, but the people listening to this is, you got to look for that evidence, the signs of the evidence, right? And if they're involved in competition, that's pretty easy to determine. And when it's not competitive, it's a little bit harder, right? Because you get into the weird lands, but it's very easy to be roped in,
Absolutely, and you have to look back and see who, unfortunately, you fought in the streets, and you start looking at people and then they're teaching, and all of a sudden they have more degrees than a thermometer on their belt, and you're like, it doesn't change much. I mean, after a certain age, you're still going to be the same throughout your life, and you're like, something's there that's not there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have to look at that. But the story you were telling me, I know Joe Judt very well. And it reminds me of a student of mine. His nickname was, they nicknamed him because of the fight that I'm going to tell you, the Spirit Maker. So we used to call him Espiritu. Espiritu here now. And we're fighting in East Texas. And I had taken them 2 boxing fights before, and they had done fairly well. And he was a middleweight, and was fighting a kid that was at least a head over him,
Right.
And he had big old neck, big broad shoulders, and he comes over and he goes, and his brother, where they're sitting down, he goes, "That's the guy I'm gonna fight." And I go, "Yeah, that's the guy you're gonna fight." Well, he's bigger than John, And John looks at me, yells Espiritu, and looks at me, and he goes, "I don't think I can beat him." And I go, "Don't worry about it. Just do what you have to do. Just do what you have to do. What you've been doing in the ring, just do what you have to do." So, me being who I am, I said, "You guys stay here. Don't be warming up. To me, warming up, you're just telling everybody else, look at what I'm doing." And people can, if their coaches or their second some point, he's already reading what your mistakes are, right? And I was looking at him, and they were warming him up on the other side. So I kind of wait around. I kind of looked over, and I said, okay, and I came back, and I said, "Listen, his hands are nowhere near his chin. His hands are chest level right here. He does not crouch. He's up with a stiff neck." He goes, "I want you to go double jab, make sure that he crosses over, and give him an overright." and I want you to give him the hardest hitting override you ever did. 35 seconds later, the guy was on the floor, keeled over. And he goes, well, thanks, Professor. He goes, how did you know that? And he goes, you have to pay attention all the time.
Yeah.
So they're working out their guys right there. And they're telling everybody else how they fight. They think they're intimidating you, but guess what? You're just learning how to beat them.
Yeah. I got a funny flip side to that story for you. I was at the NACMAF, I think it was called, Nationals, this big tournament in Florida for Chinese martial arts, right? And I brought the Shuai Jia team down, but I was taken out of the competition because my teacher couldn't make it, so I became a judge, which was very disappointing to me, right? So I've got guys fighting in Sanda, right, up in the Lake Tai platform, and most of those guys around the corner and stuff, and there were these guys over to the side of the ring, to the platform, and they were working some Thai pads, and they were working them hard. And I think they were trying to psych out the fighters that they were going to be fighting. And Master David Lin, the guy from Atlanta, who was a very prominent Shuai Jia guy, student of Chan Chang, he's like, Joe, I always act like he's a cigarette in his mouth, because that's how I remember him, right? He's like, come with me. So I go with him, and some of my guys follow me, right? Because they're like, I want to see what's going on. This will be cool, right? So he goes, okay. And he starts just like beating the shit out of me on the floor, like doing full velocity aerial throws. And I'm landing on the concrete. I'm just getting right back up again, because that's what we did. I was young and skinnier then, right? It was no problem. And what I didn't realize what was happening is those guys were watching. And they went from watching the corner of their eyes, to stopping, to putting their pads down, to not showing up in the ring. He was getting rid of the competition before it even stepped into the ring. It was hilarious.
Yeah. That's what you do. Here's another one. And it was Golden Gloves. I took a team of 8, and I came back with 7. This is why I came back with 7. I had a young lad. He was about 13 years old. I'm not going to mention his name, but we're sitting down, and we're already getting ready to go up. They're calling us up. We're a fight away, and I'm there, and I'm with. I don't know if you remember him. He was going to go. He used to be a boxer that he was on the Olympic team, but they didn't go to the Olympics in '84. His name was Delio Palacios, Baby Red Palacios, with Donald Curry and all that team that didn't go to the Olympics. And he was my second. Okay, and we're there, and we're in Corpus Christi. And the other guy tells me, I'm finally going to beat you. He was in the Corpus Christi PAL. And I go, how many times? Well, I said, but how many times have I beat you? I told the guy, He goes, 10 times. And I go, okay. And you think you're going to beat me now? And the guy goes, oh, this one right here won the silver gloves. Now he's going to get the gold gloves. And golden gloves is he's fighting golden gloves for when they're younger and in boxing, when they're youth, that's the highest you can get. And then there's golden gloves, right? And I turn around, and he goes, yeah, and this is. I go, well, and I look down at my boxer, and my boxer kind of looks at me, and he can start seeing that fear in his eye, and his shoulders kind of start struggling back, starts doing this kind of motion, and I start squaring him back off. And I go, man, but here we're sparring him, and he broke the other kid's ribs. And he goes up there, I didn't, Professor. They're kind of like, step back at it, like trying to psych out the other kid, So when I'm walking up there, I'm walking up to the ring, and he's kind of pushing him, and I go, don't worry about it. And he's gonna beat me. Don't worry, think about it. Just go up there. And then we're walking up, and he's up in the ring, and the bell rings, and I'm walking down, from the ring down. I'm looking up, and the referee goes, hands up. And he tells my boxer, hands up. And he goes, like, he turns around and goes, like me? Yeah, you put your hands up. And then look at him and go, put your hands up. I had to throw in the towel. And he lost, he lost big time, But, it's the psych. It's what I'm getting at is when you're in competition, they can psych you out, and they psych mine out mentally, and they'll beat you.
When that happens, it's it's a thing. I mean, there was a situation once. I'm not going to go into all the details, but there was a whole martial arts school that I ended up on the wrong side of because they thought that they could tell people they get magic powers and all they had to do is join their religion and do this and do that. And I kind of like called them on that stuff. And so I ended up with this conflict. And I met one of their people who was a very skilled guy, and he heard my name. He wanted to fight me. And I said, sure. I said, that's great. Do you have health insurance? And he goes, what? I go, do you have good health insurance? You get like low deductible? And he goes, what are you talking? He goes, yeah. I go, how about dental? How's your dental? And I just kept going like this. By the time it was done, he had no desire to fight me whatsoever because, he started imagining all the things that could happen. There was something going on he didn't know, right? And that's something that, to be honest, with all the fighting skills in the world, the ability to diffuse someone and send them off onto a different game so you don't have to fight them, that's good in real life too, right?
That's negotiation. You better be, and that's the best negotiation there is when you're able to negotiate your way out of a fight. People always say, what was the best fight you've been in? The one I haven't been in. That's the best fight.
Absolutely.
I remember I was younger and stupid, and we were bouncing at a bar, and this guy just looked. He looked like the Green Mile, and he was looking down at me, and I'm kind of like, there's nothing I can do here,
Yeah.
And I said, why don't you come over here? Let's get him a beer. And I ended up getting him a beer, and he became one of the nicest guys you have ever met.
Oh yeah.
Come over here, sit down right here in the bar. I sat him down where we can all watch him. Yeah. I bought him a beer from the bar. And, we're there talking. We started joking around. They goes, hey, we're going to go back to work. Okay, yeah, I'm right here. It became the nicest, guy that was there. But he was in there to, pick a fight. He had, unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, usually, real violence usually only happens when someone is not right, is truly a predator, or is truly confused. And that last one, you can either unconfuse or defuse them, right? The predator, they have to feel like they're the prey all of a sudden. And they, a lot of times they'll back down. Or you give them nothing to let them know that you can defend yourself. So you just take care of it. But the crazy person, that's hard. That's a hard one.
Or a person that's on drugs. If you come into something like that, they're on drugs. Those are the hardest ones because, they keep on popping up like a jack in the box, and you bring them down, they'll pop up again. And no pain tolerance is there. The pain's gone, really. They'll feel it later on. And that's when things occur. That's when, you see a policeman and all of a sudden there's a dead guy. Why? Because there was no pain tolerance. And then you find out that he was on drugs or something. All of a sudden, oops, something happened. I tore his shoulder off. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And,
no.
And you have to, and those are the danger parts. But all in all, not that many people are going to get into fights.
No. Well,
no, very few. I mean, yes, and there's people out there that do get into fights, but when I'm talking about in the vast majority of people that go take martial arts, very few of them are ever going to use it.
I think it's very true. It's funny, of course, geography can matter. Like I had a student who had moved to Chicago from West Virginia, and he heard me and my students talking about stuff that would happen in the city, and he goes, he told me, he goes, Joe, he goes, when I first moved here, I would have thought you were completely full of it. All you guys have all these different stories. And he goes, but I've lived here for a year now, and I've had 3 attempted muggings, or people trying to pick fights. So, I think if you grew up in the North Shore and Glencoe, forget it, you're fine. But if you lived in the city, it's a different environment. But for most people, and I think that also cheapens the martial art is they have no threat. They feel no threat. And so they're really happy doing something that just makes them feel good. And that's a challenge when people are looking for something of true value.
Absolutely. And I want people to take something with it because we're talking and folks out there, it's like talking to my brother. We're talking about the martial arts back and forth, and when you guys go out there to start looking for a martial art, you all should actually, pay attention to the school. How long has the school been around? How old is the instructor? I'm not saying that young guys cannot be good, and can teach you something. But when you start having great grandmasters and the guy's 24 years old, it just doesn't happen. Stuff like that. Look at who they're affiliated with, where the schools are at, where the school is located as well. And the last thing is look at their senior students.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice.
Go ahead.
In today's world, there's so many associations out there, and there's these fake associations, and there's these diploma mills, and there's this stuff. So there's a level of education required when you investigate that. But certain groups are known for certain things, right? And some groups are more obscure than others. You got to dig. But the real proof in the pudding is looking at those senior students and what do you see? Now, the problem is if you're completely uneducated or have heavy preconceptions, you may not know what you're looking at. So, then also that's where I think having a plan, knowing what you want out of martial arts. Do you want to do combat sports? Do you want to learn how to just fight? Do you want to do something more self-defense? Or are you just looking to move better, be healthier, more organized and stuff, right? There's all these different levels to what's called martial arts today. I think we became friends because of the particular attitude we share, right? But there's people in martial arts that are, they're into something different. And I think one of the big disillusionments that people have is they thought they were getting one thing and instead they got another.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So,
and you're absolutely correct. Everything you said was on point. And something to that question answer that your friend stated on that comment, the lesser men. You know what? I'm going to go into this. In the last 30 years that I've been teaching, not only here in France, everywhere else, there's been a trend. In the 90s, you would see the fathers bringing the son to the school to learn how to fight.
Yeah.
Now it's probably all moms are calling the school to find out how much the school is, to price check, where's the location, and they're calculating how many times do they go per week and how safe is it.
Yep.
And I'm going to take them to that school, and they could care less if they're going to learn how to fight or not. It's more like you know what I'm saying?
It's an activity.
You see more moms now. I think 9 out of 10 moms are the ones that are bringing in the boys to learn how to defend themselves to a martial arts school. While in the 90s, or I would say 98 back, it was all the fathers that were the ones that were calling in. You would rarely see a mom bring in their kid.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true in my own experience, and I think there's something to say about. I think the concept of manhood has been kind of purposely diluted. The schools treat young boys like they're defective girls, right? Yeah. I had a student years and years ago where the school convinced the parents to put him on Ritalin and stuff like this. And his only problem, he didn't have ADD. The kid was brilliant, right? I spent 4 hours talking to him once because his aunt goes, "Oh, he's such a mess. Would you talk to him? You're such a together person. He doesn't have a dad, da-da-da-da." What I thought was me a 20-minute pep talk and kick him out was a 4-hour conversation where I realized there's nothing wrong with this kid, but his family had him all drugged up, right? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not saying I am, but I'm telling you, if you go to a doctor, they're going to tell you what the differential diagnosis is, and he wasn't that. I don't need to be excuse my language, a physician to define that. And they basically took a normal boy and made him a little crazy by putting him on medicine he didn't need. And that is so common today. In my own experience, I had a teacher try to do that to my kid once. And what my kid needed was glasses. He couldn't see the board. And because he complained, she decided he needed to be drugged. This is a school teacher, you know? And so then, where are the fathers? I don't know. And why don't they speak up and stand up? Right. I think we do know where it is. You know, there's a very high divorce rate in this country, largely initiated by, there's a lot of alienation of men, basically, from their families and from their kids. It's a kind of goes back to a conversation we had offline. And the societal ills, I think, would mean that the schools would be even more popular, because where else are you going to get that influence you're not getting at home? If there's a father present, if there's a weak beta male, you know, I would think the martial arts school is where the kids would show up who needed that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I cannot tell you in the last 10 years how many kids I have actually had to, boys, teach them, and young men, teach them how to shake hands properly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? And that's sad, because they come in there and they kind of do this, and you're like, no, here's how you shake hands. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and look people in the eye, you know, be confident.
Absolutely. I got them now, and nothing wrong with them, but now I'll see them with their heads down every time they'll talk, and I say, you know what? Once every 2 weeks, we're going to do a report, and you guys are going to come out here and learn how to talk in front of people. And their grades have gone up. Now their grades are up. So I'm like, this is what we need to do. Yeah.
It used to be a part of that rite of passage, right? Some of my earliest martial arts experience, I learned from this great guy, Sifu Manuel Rodriguez. He was a Southern Manus guy and did Bak Mei, but he had started, when he was a kid, he did judo and Tang Soo Do and stuff, and he produced one champion after the other. In fact, when I won my Sanda matches, that was under his tutelage, right? And he basically terrorized his students, and not in a bad way, not like a cult guy, just beating people to say, but you had to train, you had to fight, you had to know what you were doing, and you had to just throw aside any concern you had and do this. And I saw him take people who you could never imagine would be able to do that, and he got them to do it through just the sheer quality of teaching, force of charisma, right? And in a real school, that's what you find, right? And that's the vibe I get off of you, right? If you don't see that combination of skill and that force of charisma, I think that's required to get through to people. Find the school that has that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the instructor. If you like the school, go in there. If you're actually looking, the problem is, if you're looking for somebody specific, you might have to travel out of town. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with traveling across the state lines to go learn some good martial arts with somebody.
I always give the example, like one of my top students, DJ, traveled from Indiana all the way into Illinois to train with me. I had a guy who came from Madison, Wisconsin. That's several hours away from me, right? Once a week he drove down just to train, right? I myself, I mentioned it earlier, there was a period of time where I was driving all over the place. The things I wanted to train weren't always available. And then at time, I started expanding. All of a sudden, my teacher's somewhere else, and now I'm flying out there. I'm investing time and energy. I'm going to weird places like the middle of nowhere in New Mexico to meet a guy who decided to live on a mountain now, right? Just so I can keep my training going. And you can embrace that lifestyle, and really get a tremendous amount out of it. But you don't have to. You can accomplish things. But when you put it in that context, an hour drive is not a big deal.
I got guys that drive from Austin and San Antonio every second and fourth Sunday to come down and train. That's a 2-hour, 3-hour drive, and they come down here. And then you got guys that live in the same neighborhood, and they're making excuses left and right for not coming to train.
Well, put the Doritos down, turn off the Netflix, You got to ask yourself, where are you going to be a year from now? Where are you going to be, right? Who are you going to be? You can be the guy who sits in front of the TV all the time. You can be the guy who has accomplished nothing. Or a year later, you can be faster, stronger, better, in every possible way, just by showing up and doing your classes and extra work, right?
I tell the young guys that are jumping in, the 17, 18-year-olds that come in and want to do that. Look at this as a second vocation. Look at it like you're learning something, because later on, you're going to move somewhere else and you're going to want to train. You're going to have to train others to train yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have the backing of us and everybody else, that's the best way to do it. So people that are going into martial arts should also look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because when I left Chicago, I had this great batch of students there, and a lot of them spread out too. And now the problem became, we're such a strange group that what we practice, how we practice it, that you just can't find easily something that's kind of similar, right? And so they had to start practice groups. They have to train with other people. And they had, and the ones that didn't apply themselves during that class, they can't do that, right? They don't have enough skill, they don't have enough ability or understanding to be able to do that. And that's a lost opportunity. Why? One of my students, my longest student in this current generation of people, is got Guru Joe Judt. He said it once. He had, periodically he'd have extended absences from class for work and family and stuff. But he never forgot a single thing. He never stopped practicing a single thing. And I said, Jeff, I'm really impressed. Why is it that you don't slack off? I'm curious, because everyone else in the world does. And he goes, well, I've invested my time, my money, my energy in doing this. Why would I throw it away?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's, I think we should all embrace that,
Mm-hmm. And that's it right there. Why should you not throw it away? Why are you going to throw it away?
Why are you going to throw it away? And it's because it's you. You can go forward or you can go backwards. So like there's literally no standing. It's like it's I don't want to actually use the analogy I was about to use because it's kind of a negative analogy, but you literally either progress or decline. There's no standing still. There's no middle ground. But the benefit is tremendous. Look, I'm getting older now, right? And by all rights, with my family history and stuff, you'd think I'd have all these health problems. I don't, right? I look more like Sammo Hung than Bruce Lee, but I annoy the doctor by dropping down into a silo while I'm in the office and popping up and throwing a kick just to show him I'm not not dying, and it's just all that training getting you a physical benefit, a health benefit. I assure you, in my travels and stuff, the awareness that comes from training is incredibly helpful, right? In terms of avoiding trouble or cutting it off or solving problems. And the fact that, if you've gone through kind of experiences I know you've gone through and ones I've gone through, you don't get as fazed by other stuff, other stresses in life, because it's just not that bad,
And absolutely, we'll go back to, because you said a bunch of excellent points. It's experiences in life, and those experiences in life are the ones that make you a better instructor. You want to put it that way, regardless of the title that you have, it makes you a better instructor. And those experiences in life, if you don't have them, how can you teach something you've never lived? That's what I tell people. You cannot teach something you never lived. If you've never been in the ring, never, not even sparred in the ring or were a sparring partner of a ring for others, how are you going to tell them what to do in the ring?
Yeah, it's not
going to happen. You have to be there. Okay?
There is no comparison to actually being in the ring. It's, and I also tell people to say, look, yes, there's very effective self-defense methods out there, right? You can drop someone like this, outside of the rule set and da 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 da. But the minute you step in the ring against someone who's comparably skilled, right, and you have to fight someone who knows how to fight, right, and you're not taking advantage of the psychological tricks that can be applied in street self-defense, that's a much tougher experience. That's a hard thing, especially when suddenly you find yourself up against someone who won the genetic lottery and they've like super athlete skills, and now you got to be really smart. You got to beat this guy. You got tenacity, and you know, it is. You know, I'm watching that, like the MMA world go through the same thing we've gone through, where all of a sudden there's schools out there that are really, they're doing, I don't know what it is, they're doing programs, but they're not actually doing anything, right? They're not competing. That's meant for competition, right? And I mean, I encourage my guys, you know, like my guy who moved to Iowa, what he found was a boxing gym. So what he does is he uses our stuff in the boxing ring to see how it works. He follows their rules. So he can only use his handwork and stuff, but that's what he does, and get some practice. My guys down in Texas, they have regular visitors at different BJJ and MMA clubs, and they'll spar under their rules. And some of the rules, you know, they're going to get schooled because they don't do that, right? Mm-hmm. But they're trying to, you know, how do I defend myself from this for this long? How do I get out of this? How do I do that? You know, they're learning how to adapt and change and deal with that pressure, and they start winning without even doing what the other guys do. And that's something that has, I think, really been lost. And I'm going to give a shout out again to Steve Rodriguez, because back in the day, he used to make me have in my trunk a pair of kickboxing shorts, a karate gi, a taekwondo dobak, right? And my Shuai Jiao jacket and stuff, right? Because I would never know what school I was going to go to and what rules I was going to spar under. And that was an experience that was, I was irreplaceable, right?
Absolutely.
You know, but anyways, I digress. So in summary, I guess it comes down to, you know, there were a couple of really great points you made that you know, I'm gonna liberate and share out there as well, which is watch those senior students with the caveat that, you know, do your homework, check yourself too, understand what you're interested in, what you're looking for, right? Then research them. Who understands them and recognizes them. Now, martial arts is full of politics. We all have guys who are bitching about us here or there because that's just the way anything is like this, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, there's certifications, right? There's authentic history. Like the only non-French citizen to teach in France. That's a pretty bold statement, right? You know, I didn't even recognize this thing, but like in my case, I used to teach in Pingtong Park in Chinatown. From a Chicago perspective, that's calling your shot really hard, teaching in Chinatown, right? And you can see that stuff and go, okay, that's a thing. And like, you know, of course, I have a fight record too, and that's easy to find. And but when you look at someone, they have no fight record. Their students look like crap. And their association is like some sort of United States Premier Soakiship Association. You know, you can probably dodge that bullet, right? You know, and funny is I think that in the effort to be a kinder, gentler generation, some of the younger generation have become unable to discern right from wrong and have lost their sense of humor. And it's really unfortunate. And to be honest, I you know, there's a lot of people I've kicked out of my classes because they're just a pain in the ass. They don't have a sense of humor. They can't tell right from wrong, and they can't make a judgment. They're like, oh, you can't shame this or shame that. And I go, okay, look, for one thing, I made it through my whole life without ever having anyone in my professional career ever accuse me of anything. I'm amazed that anyone ever gets into trouble, right? Because it's not hard to not get into trouble, right? You know, people are people, right? It's a simple thing. Treat people like how you want to be treated. This is like shit they teach you when you're a kid, right? How hard could this be? But there are people who treat others badly. There are people who take advantage of others. There are people who do this stuff. And just because there's people who are racist or this or that, it doesn't mean that you still can't judge right from wrong, that if someone is doing something that's wrong, you can't call it out. And
Absolutely.
and the weird thing is things that historically in every culture ever known to man have been clearly defined as really not a good idea are suddenly suspect because, who knows why? Because we don't like shame anymore. We don't like,
Listen,
effort.
you have to have when you go through this and you grow up and being bullied and seeing bullies, and just like you having the Batman syndrome, going protect the other skin bullies. I mean, you have to have a type of sense of humor to do this. Okay, you're punching each other in the face, kicking each other in the legs, and laughing about it afterwards. Yeah. So you have to have a sense of humor. Now, there's difference between insults and stuff like that, but what happens is that people need to understand that martial arts, they want to, in today's world, the instructors have to look in a certain way for them to be accepted in the martial art realm. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And I have nothing against tattoos or anything like that, but it looks like everybody, to be teaching MMA, you have to have tattoos and a crew cut and to be teaching him. You know what I'm saying? And so they can have persona. Everybody has a little persona on which way they go. I understand. I understand it. I understand it.
Yeah. There's certain self-fulfilling stereotypes. It's just like you can go into these schools and find like the lily white dude speaking with pidgin Korean or something, right? We had a bunch of those when I was growing up. So there's always those things that happen, right? And sometimes you look past that. Like I knew some rather phenomenal martial artists that had some very unusual affectations, right? And it's you gotta kind of got to flow with it a little bit if they got the skill, and that's true. But at the same time, do you want to be a stereotype? Do you want to fit in that badly, right? And I think as martial artists, we're usually weird ducks. We both really believe in tradition and structure, but we also tend to be much more open-minded, because when you meet people and try to beat each other up, you become friends and you cross cultures and you learn all this, this stuff. And it's all the more reason not to be a cookie cutter human being, right? Because you get that experience.
Absolutely. And what we're getting at, folks, is when you go to martial arts school, be yourself. Yeah. Learn. Be yourself. In a school that everybody's themselves, and you go in there and you see a school that's kind of like the United Nations, everybody comes in there and respectively be their own person. Those are the schools you want to be at, because if everybody's a cookie cutter,
it's a thing.
Everybody's trying to look one way or look the other, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, it's funny, and I won't try to go on too much longer here, but recently, I had the China flu that was going around for a little while, and suddenly I had all this time on my hands because I was tired and couldn't work. And so I was watching karate videos on YouTube, and specifically little documentaries about different karate styles and stuff I didn't know. Okay, when I was growing up, and no offense to the karate, there's a great karate out there, but when I was growing up, there was a lot of American karate where I was, and it was terrible. And I didn't have a high respect for it until I fought a guy who was a 6-dan JKA guy, and he actually hit me, and I was like, holy crap, there's good karate, right? And it changed my mind. I started seeing all this different stuff. But what I found fascinating was you have this picture of karate where it's this very uniform, structured thing, and because in Japan you're in one school and you never leave that school, right? They're very, very structured in that. And there's something good to say about that, and also something, bad about that. But what I found interesting was when you dig into each of these individual styles, some of the same conversations. Now, I'm not talking about a verbal conversation, but the figuring out what they're doing and what does this mean when I do it, and how that impacts the practice that many of us Americans have had going, how do I emphasize this or emphasize that? Do I do this or I do that? How do I play with this? How do I make it work? These guys did the same thing. These different lineages have very different ways of looking at the same thing, because each of us have a particular set of attributes, right? I guarantee you, if we had both started in the same method at the same time, physiologically we're different. with different attributes. I would still look very different than you, still clearly the same thing, but I would look different, because of how I emphasize my power or this or that. And the fact that those conversations happen in the karate world, I find, I'm trying not to say karate like an American, is it was completely fascinating to me because there was this monolithic view. They did think for themselves. They did try to be themselves, but then you have that Confucianist culture where it then becomes a new lockstep, right? Whereas I think many of the coaches here, you look at the person and you change what you're doing to fit the individual to some degree. And, to me, that's something you look for in a gym. Can they teach you, right? But that doesn't happen right away, nor at the beginning. I'm a big believer in shut up and train for the first several years. So, but anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting off course again.
I got something with that, because of what you said is I was talking with my professor, Paul Viviani, and one time, and he says, once you become a professor, because I was a monitor for a while, and he goes, become a professor, you have to realize one thing: everybody's different. Everybody's going to throw a jab, cross, uppercut, hook, fuerte, coup de bas. Everybody's going to do it, but everybody's going to use it differently. Never try to teach somebody to fight like you. Give them all the tools that they need and the attributes, and they themselves have to put it together. It comes out of their own personality. And it took me many years to understand that, and a lot of systems, like I said, a lot of systems have lost that, and everything's become a cookie cutter thing. Everybody does the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be the same way. Everybody needs to be moving the same way. If you don't think like the professor or the instructor or whoever's there, whatever name you want to put it, they're going to hold you accountable for it. No. You go in there and you learn this. Everybody has their own personality. Everybody has their own characteristics. Everybody has their own different body shapes and different speeds of movement, and everybody's going to move differently. And they might use several similar combinations or similar what have you, but everybody's going to be different.
Yeah. I mean, there's real truth in that. I think there's a comfort there for the new student. If you find the right gym, you look at those senior students, they have the quality. Your background investigation at least points you that this is probably a good choice. You can have confidence that they work to make you capable of doing this versus, quote unquote, what I see in these lesser schools is this slavery to the curriculum, right? Where you memorize something and now you're promoted, right? And it's a different thing that I recommend avoiding, right? If you see everyone moving forward at the same pace, it's a terrible school because everyone's different, right? And some people may be really good at one thing, another person's really good at another. That's okay, right? That you don't have to learn, in the exact steps in which it's taught, because everyone is different, and if you find yourself in that situation where you're completely locked in, I think that's something that you gotta consider as maybe they're not teaching me, right? And I'm not saying that to confuse like group classes where there's a structure to the group class, but I'm talking about your relative development, right? And the instructor being honest about where you are and what you're doing.
Because you will be tested one day. You're going to be tested.
Yeah.
And there's two types of tests. You're going to be tested in reality. Hopefully you never are. But if you are, you have to be able to pass that exam. But if you're tested for a pedagogy type test, for rank in the school or the association, that is just for that.
Yeah.
So it happens. Brother, we're running out of time, but I want to thank you for this because it was a great conversation. Hopefully folks out there can understand what we're talking about. And when you're going to because there's a lot of great information Guru Joe just said, when you go out and look for a martial arts school, look number one, look at the senior students. And then start finding out a little bit of history. And do not, ask questions. Ask your instructor where, what, and everything else. Ask them who his instructor was and his instructor's instructor. If they cannot tell you that, then something wrong.
Amen to that. Professor, it was a great conversation. It's an honor being here with you again. And I do want to flip the script on you though, and take over the interview chair and talk to you about your experiences in the near future. All right? I think that'd be really fascinating to everybody. So
we'll do something. Give it a couple of months, and we'll get it going.
All right.
And if we have in Silat, you have exams once a year, and the exam is called the passage exam, the passing of a grade, and we're having one. It's going to be the first weekend of June. So if you have any of your crew that's in Texas, they want to come over and work out, and want to come over and learn a little bit, come send them this way. The doors are open. Yes,
send me the dates, and I'll let them know, because I'd like to encourage them to do that. I have one guy. He's down in McAllen now, which is not too far from you. And then the breasts are up in San Antonio. So I'll encourage them. I think it'd be a good experience. Be fun.
Yeah, it'll be great.
So,
all right. Until next time, much peace.
Peace out, brother. Take care.
Be safe.
Bye.
And Sandra Whitten with Casey Garcia on the Republican side.
Today, in America, more than 5.5 million men, women, and children train in a martial art regularly. Buitrón Academy has been serving Laredo for over 30 years now. Our adult classes are geared for producing the best in you, teaching you street-ready techniques. With the arts of Silat and Kinpo, you'll learn the traditions of these sciences of combat, as passed down professor to student.
Hello, my name is Jaime Garcia. I started Silat when I was 17 or 18. I'd like to say it was because I was in search of knowledge, but truth be told, I joined Silat because I got my ass kicked in a bar. My mouth was writing checks, my ass couldn't cash cash, so I figured I should learn how to fight. I was looking through the paper, trying to find someone that I could really learn something from, and I came across Buitrón's school. Even though it was on the other side of town for me, I wanted to go someplace where I wasn't going to be wasting my time. So I came by. He was nice enough to take me on as a student, and I started learning. I went all the way up until I think it was white glove, pretty consistently. As a matter of fact, I think I even failed one glove because one year I wasn't prepared enough. I believe it was my green glove. So I had to take my green glove twice, but definitely didn't stop me from coming back, because that was definitely my fault. But I kept coming back year after year, and I loved it. I had to stop when I was about 25, 26. I had to go to school, I had to go off to college, but I never forgot what I learned here, and I promised myself I would always come back. I just had to get some life stuff done. So I went to school. So that definitely not only gave me the confidence to do so many other things in my life, but it also got me out of a lot of trouble that I admittedly got myself into. But definitely one of the most important things I ever learned in my life was how to fight. I finally came back. Even though I live in Austin, which is a good 3.5 hours away, I still make the time to come every month to come and learn, because it's one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, one of the best things I ever did. And I believe it gives a person something that the society is very much missing these days, which is a discipline and a drive to go forward, drive to keep doing what you're doing. And I believe in it so much, I'm just waiting for my kids to get old enough to hopefully start doing it themselves. And yeah, best thing I ever did in my life, and I wouldn't change it.
Come train at the best kept secret of Laredo. Give us a call for your free evaluation at 956 401-4868 or check out our website at savat.biz. Follow us on YouTube and Facebook.